Welcome back on this Tuesday. Time for business. Of course, Carl is joining us. Markets. It's always a funny time of year because they're a bit quiet, but they're anxious for news. What's happening?
Anxious for news, as always, especially in Europe. But Europe, just a few markets open today. Let's go first to the US, though. We'll just take care of that concern. They're closed yesterday, and the European markets are opening today, as we can see there, in positive territory. The London index, the FTSE, was closed today. The bad news is not yet here, actually. As we can see, we see the green, beautiful green of Christmas there for the rise in the markets just at the start. But pressure is on European debt-ridden nations as bonds come up for renewal. Now, let's take a look at the Asian markets. Trading has been thin, the volumes have been low, and mainly down. Nikkei is down 0.5 point. South Korea's Kospi reversed early gains, as you can see there, to close down over 0.5 point. China's Shanghai Composite is also down. So not a great lot of news to report, I'm afraid, as ever.
And it gets worse because of unemployment figures.
That's right. Unemployment figures in France are bad news, obviously, for the economy, bad news for the people out of jobs, and bad news for Sarkozy himself. The numbers are pretty high. They reached about 3 million in the conventionally defined unemployment, and then another 1 million added to that. So more than 4 million people. Bad news indeed. Siobhan Silk has this report.
The queues have been getting longer at French job centres over the last 7 months. The trend didn't let up in November. Almost 30,000 people joined the unemployment line last month. Now almost 3 million people in France are out of work, an unemployment rate of 9.3%. And with recent announcements of job losses in the automobile and banking sectors, analysts aren't optimistic about the new year.
We're expecting 2012 to be catastrophic. We expect the unemployment rate to be on the order of 10.7% by the end of the year. Right now, we're forecasting zero economic growth.
The French government says wide economic factors are to blame.
This is happening in the context of the crisis, particularly the European crisis. We were expecting this because when growth is slowed down, it's naturally more difficult to battle unemployment.
But the opposition socialists point the finger at the government.
Yes, there's a crisis, but the president has given up in the face of the crisis. He's not putting employment at the heart of his priorities.
President Nicolas Sarkozy has promised strong measures, among them making it easier for employers to make temporary redundancies or allowing businesses to renegotiate salaries and working hours. But if those proposals are to go ahead, unions will have to give their okay, a tough prospect, and Sarkozy may not have much time. With the presidential election just months away, France's stagnating economy won't do the president's re-election chances any favours.
Let's get to another fascinating story, and that's this deal between Japan and China vis-a-vis currencies, and yet not having much of a global impact so far.
No, well, indeed. Imagine two economies, two of the biggest economies in the world, not trading with each other in their own currencies. Imagine that these are Japan and China, and actually trading in the US dollar. The announcement was made, though, during a trip of the Prime Minister of Japan, Yoshihide Noda. While he met Chinese President Hu Jintao, they unveiled plans to promote direct exchange of their currencies and to basically build a bridge towards an end to the use of the dollar as far as their mutual trade goes. And the whole idea, of course, is to conduct exchanges without using the US dollar, thereby avoiding all kinds of unnecessary costs.
Meantime, no small take. China had wanted to increase production of electric and hybrid vehicles to 500,000 by the end of this year. With that deadline almost up, production is way behind schedule, with only a few thousand electric cars and buses a year so far. But one area at least seems to be thriving: small independent automakers who build microcars for local markets.
The small city of Linqing seems far removed from China's industrial and economic boom. Most people get around on 2 wheels, but they're sharing the roads with more and more cars. They're cleaner than the motorbikes and trikes they're replacing. Linqing is a major hub for electric car manufacturing. But there are no massive production lines here, just dozens of small workshops like this one. The workers hand-build microcars that have a mini price tag to match, around €2,000.
We started in 2009 with 200 cars. Then we built 500 in 2010. This year we should reach 1,000 vehicles. And soon, 1 million. That's my dream before I retire. 1 million cars.
This workshop builds 3 different models. They all have similar technology under the bonnet, 5 lead-acid batteries in series and a small electric motor. The whole thing is surrounded by a light, non-metal body.
It's comfortable. I've already driven a trike, but never a four-wheeled car. This is much better than a normal car. It doesn't make any noise or generate vibrations.
Many of the buyers of these cars are older people with limited incomes who are happy with limited performance. Top speed is 50 kilometers an hour and battery life is relatively short.
My activities don't bring me further than 5 kilometers and I can recharge the batteries in 6 or 7 hours.
That might be good enough for the local market, but if Lingqing's car makers want to start selling vehicles nationally or internationally, they'll have to improve those specs.
Let's go back to the markets now. And Carl, you've got a guest to try and make sense of them for us.
Well, that's right. And not only over a period of days or weeks, but over centuries, I dare say. Now, according to one study, markets enjoy what's called a Santa Claus effect. It's a kind of rally where in the immediate aftermath, after Christmas and well into the new year, there are higher returns actually to investors. And why is that? Well, on the line we have Ben Jacobson. He's Professor of Finance at Massey University in New Zealand. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
Now, you've studied this phenomenon that we're referring to as the Santa Claus effect. Could you please start off by just describing what it is and when you think it kicked in?
There used to be something that was known as the January effect, where stock markets used to perform well in January. And people didn't know what was causing that, although some people believed that it might be related to Christmas. What we did in our study was look over 300 years of stock market data. What we found was that indeed this whole January effect didn't exist before 1835 in England.
Now you traced it back to that. Sorry to cut you short. We don't have much time, but you traced it back indeed to the middle of the 19th century, early 19th century. How much would you say it's played a role right into the current day?
Oh, the January effect has more or less disappeared. It seems to have moved forward, and that's where the Santa Claus rally is coming from. So the markets at the end of December nowadays have a tendency to go up. So it seems that investors anticipate that January was going to be a good month, and over time that seems to be moving forward in the European and in the U.S. markets.
Well, that's all we have time for on that one, Mr. Jacobson. Thank you very much indeed for that.
Okay, my pleasure.
Carl bringing us the Santa Claus effect long after Christmas. That's it from us. We're back just after a break. Don't go away. You're watching France 24.